Welcome to the May 14th Trips and Traps. Andy Serling, Richard Migliore.
Got some interesting races that I think clearly illustrate, and we talk about it time and again, just how important starts are. You don't want to be shuffled back behind horses that you're probably naturally faster than.
Yeah, no question. The start will affect some of these horses. And also talking about some first-time starters in those turf races, first-time starters trying to go long on the turf that might be a little bit better than their final finish suggests. And we'll talk about why we think that's the case. But we're going to start with a horse that has experience, and this is the 8th race from the 9th on Saturday, and a blowout performance by Wincoma, the winner of the race. Very impressive. But you're going to see at the start, the 4-horse, Broadway Bay, will break okay, but gets completely steadied out. And Richie totally taken out of a race where the pace held together.
Yeah, and so far behind the field, and a lot of times when horses get back out of the pack that much and they lose that herd instinct, it kind of takes them a while to get interested again, and he was well out of the race.
It's shocking. You'll see when, because we're not going to see him or be able to stop the race until we hit the top of the stretch. But you're going to see just how far back he is, because when you think you've gotten to him, you haven't even gotten to him yet. He's that far behind. And Wincoma for Gary Siaka ran a stakes quality performance coming off the layoff. The one global positioning who ends up finishing second, he's right behind him and moves up. And the thing that I thought was interesting was there really wasn't much position shift during the running of this race. And Broadway Bay will make an amazing run to finish 5th. So you want to say, was he running while the race was over? I'm not so sure that's the case, Rich.
Well, that was going to be my question to you. Is it just the fact that he only basically ran a quarter of a mile? You know, because after the start, Rosario's like, well, okay, this is the hand I'm dealt. I'm just going to sit on him and let him finish. And even though he's a horse with experience, he's kind of almost giving him like a first-time starter kind of ride where he's getting dirt, he's going to weave his way through traffic. And do you think this is the way, obviously not getting that far back or giving it away at the break, that he should be ridden? Just make one run.
Well, he has been a bit of a deep closer. So, I mean, I'm not, at a certain point, it feels like that's the horse he is. And maybe at a certain point, you also have to say he's just not that good, even though he takes himself out of the race. But I think this race differs from his prior two efforts in 2015, where A, he had trouble at the start, but B, he actually did some running. And I think it's a sign that he's coming around.
Well, that's interesting. Maybe he is rounding to form because he was running through the wire. Now, maybe visually it looks more impressive because some other horses are stopping at the same time, but it did look like he was finishing.
And the thing is, it's not a collapsed race. I mean, usually when they're all stopping, 3 or 4 horses or 5 horses are starting to come together at the wire. You were actually seeing separation in this race,
yes,
and he was running through it. I think he's a horse that's going to run a lot better in his next start and hopefully gets a cleaner break.
And do you think this is a horse that you'll still get a decent price on? Because it was all right, he did get bothered at the start, but other than that, it's kind of almost subtle the way he finished, I think, unless you're paying attention
I think you will get a decent price on it. Now, listen, you're going to need to find a race that has at least a fair pace in there. And in this case, while you had a fair pace, it held together. You're going to need a pace that comes apart a little bit because obviously he can't overcome strong speed that holds on.
Right, and just he needs to get away cleaner, so even if when he drops back, he's not getting shuffled back.
And he's not necessarily a horse that's shown tendencies to break. I think he got a little unlucky at the start. We'll hope it's the case. We'll see where he lands next time. You always have to handicap the races. Now, the next race, we're looking at some first-time starting colts on the Saturday card, the last race, and we're going to talk about the 2 Tis a Fleet, who will get shut off in the stretch. I think both Richie and I didn't think he had much horse. He does break a little bit slowly as it's kind of dark. He's in there. Outside of the horse you're seeing with those pink and those yellow polka dots is a horse in light blue. That's a firster for Chad Brown, the 6 Shinobi that Javier Castellano is riding. He's a horse we think did a lot more running.
I really do think he did a lot more running, and I think he breaking with the field and then getting shuffled back. They expend more energy getting shuffled back like that when he got squeezed. And if you go and watch the head on, the rail comes out a little bit, so the inside horses have to come out to maintain position. The outside horses are going to fold over, and if you're the guy caught in the jam, that's the result.
And that was the case with Shinobi, who got dropped out farther than maybe he wanted to be. Now, the 2 Tis a Fleet was able to move up facilely. He will get in trouble in the stretch, but I think this is trouble that people will overrate because it didn't appear that he really had any horse, and he might have gotten in trouble because he was a little slower than the others.
That's what I think. I think he had an opportunity maybe to go forward, wasn't quick enough didn't have enough turn of foot to take advantage of it, and then he gets shut off, and then people say, oh, what was he doing? Well, maybe he just couldn't get there, and then I thought he flattened out the last 8 inside.
That's what I thought, and I
too.
didn't feel like it was a great intimidation. Listen, he had some trouble in there, and he has a right, like anybody, to improve in his second start, but to me, and there he is behind horses, and Shinobi's back here, it was Shinobi that did all the running. He got that trouble early. It took him a little out of position. But the other thing that I like about him, and we're going to show the gallop out when he ends up in front, I don't think Shinobi did any running in this race until he got outside in the clear. I just don't think he was happy in here behind horses. And here is the 2 Tis a Fleet. You will see him get in trouble shortly.
Yeah, and the majority, you see, there, I think he was searching for room, but his horse didn't really kick on. And now you talk about Shinobi. He was running with the emergency brake on in behind horses. And when he shifts out to the clear here, he finally drops his head, really catches his stride. He's probably never been in a position where he's had so many horses in front of him.
Yeah, he really, yeah, absolutely. He really felt like a horse who very clearly needed that race, and he's going to benefit a great deal from that. And we're going to stay with it for a little bit, and then we'll come to the gallop out. And as you're going to see in the gallop out, he's going by the 12. He picked up a lot of ground on him. He just needed to get himself a start under his belt to figure out what he's doing. I think Shinobi is going to be very, very tough going forward. As a German bred, even though he worked pretty quickly at the 2-year-old sale, I got to think he's going to have no problem with more distance.
Especially the way he galloped out. He finished with energy, and his gallop out continued until he actually got in front of horses. And I think just having that experience, being in behind horses and amongst a big field, he's going to have a whole different attitude next time. He'll be a lot more on it.
Yeah, he's going to be closer. Assuming he doesn't get stayed again, it'd be a totally different horse and a tough horse to beat for trainer Chad Brown. Now, also, let me just point one thing out before we go to our last race. For those of you looking at the charts of that race and looking at the running lines or looking at the call, the fractions are wrong on screen in the charts. They've got the horses going the accurate fractions according to Trackus. The third fraction, though, is posted at 109 and 1. It makes absolutely no sense when you look at the other times. Then they have them closing at 26 and a piece. The actual third fraction is 110 and 4, roughly, in there. It's not going to make a big difference, but don't think they sped up that much in the turn. It's not possible.
Well, just common sense tells you that. They didn't go from 46 and change to 109 and 22 around a turn, no less.
Yeah, no. So keep in mind that fraction's wrong. We'll see if we can get that corrected. Moving on now to the 8th race, I believe. Is this the 8th
race?
Fifth race, I'm sorry, on the 10th on Sunday. A lot of races, a lot to remember. And this was one that was wired. I thought a great ride by Junior Alvarado. Just going to the lead and taking no prisoners with a Robbie Davis long shot. Want to talk about a couple horses in here that finished well back. One, the 6, Tis Talented, who I believe is somewhere in there. He's in purple. Oh, yep. I can't find. There's the 4. Where's back there? That's the 6. He has early trouble, excuse me. And the 4, another first-time starter, Foolish Cause, was a half to Get Stormy. The other horse, a half to Bodemeister on the turf. You saw the 4, Foolish Cause, get steady there early, Richie.
And again, what we talk about, when you're the guy caught in that jam, horses coming from the inside, the outside, and you don't have quite enough horse to continue going forward, and once you get back a half to 3/4 of length, you have to steady out.
Yeah, it just seemed like he gets that early trouble. It takes him out of the race, and ultimately Foolish Cause is going to run last in this race, and it appears he didn't run at all. I don't think that's the case. He runs up a little bit in here. You're going to see him run up, and then he's going to drop back again, and he's going to make a significant run around the turn, showing he's at least got some ability in there somewhere. Tis Talented, I thought he was running at the end like a horse that may have needed the race as well, and he may be better than it looks also.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a lot of thoughts about Foolish Cause because I think with his pedigree, and I think with the fact that he showed some run at stages, you got to think with experience he's going to break better and get stormy. His sibling was a horse that did his best running up on the pace.
Yeah, I think he's the one I want more than Tis Talented. Tis Talented, I think, maybe have been doing his running when the race was over, but this was a race, and there's Foolish Cause making that big run on the outside, where Tis Talented is getting a much more patient trip. And I think that Foolish Cause showing that run, he did some real running, but once again, this had a very moderate pace, and they sped up more towards the end.
Yeah, no doubt. But he really tipped out, got spun 5-6 wide, made the run. Then you're going to see he's going to flatten out, and rightfully so. He had a lot to overcome, and he made some run. Tis Talented was more patiently handled by Jose Lascano, kind of picked his way, didn't come out until he had to, and he finished with interest. I don't think it was an overwhelming finish, but he did finish with interest.
Yeah, I think at least he showed something. I think the other one's going to be a bigger price, and he might be more interesting going forward.
Yeah, I think so. Especially, I usually go back to that. You think about Get Stormy early in his career before he kind of figured it all out. He didn't have the same speed that he developed, and he was much more effective showing that speed.
Yeah, and maybe that could be the case with this horse. And just to talk about the pace, they went 23.49 according to Trackus. Then they went a 24.26 quarter, a 24 and roughly 24 and 1. Then they went 24 and almost 3 the third quarter and came home in 23 and 1, making it. That's why I thought Tis Talented's run was okay, because they were running at the end, but that's also the reason that it was very hard for the 4-horse Foolish Cause to make his run that effectively.
Well, it's a great point. And again, visually, sometimes when horses are stopping and horses running by, and you go, that horse was flying, when in actuality he wasn't. Where this horse was actually making up ground into a pretty good finish.
Yeah, an interesting race and one worth taking a look at. In 2 races at a mile, these maiden turf races, a lot can go on in these fields, and firsters can always improve in their second starts, and we can always use your help to point those things out to us. It's Trips and Traps at MyRank.com.